Hey everybody, Casey here with Life Abstract Gaming, and this week I want to talk about an indie game that was released about a full year ago on PC, but only just hit the Nintendo Switch a few months back. Hollow Knight. Some of you might know that I only just recently bought a Switch, so while looking for something worthwhile to play on my new hardware, I was reminded of Hollow Knight, a game that I'd only heard about but wasn't very familiar with. It ran a successful Kickstarter campaign, and with the basic premise of it being a Dark Souls-inspired Metroidvania set in an anthropomorphic bug kingdom called Hollow Nest, it was enough to warrant my interest, but the artwork and $40 price tag solidified my purchase once I saw it in the store. For anybody not familiar with the term Metroidvania, it's simply a combination of the game titles Metroid and Castlevania, which both popularized the gameplay hook of navigating maze-like maps and having progress be gated by a lack of items or abilities, which promotes backtracking through areas to find more pathways. Hollow Knight follows this formula to a T. Its map is absolutely massive, but it won't reveal that to you right away. Navigating the locations will usually start off with aimless wandering until you locate the map-making character Cornifer. He'll sell you a map of the area you're currently in if you have enough Geo, the currency of Hollow Nest. But even then, the maps he gives you oftentimes aren't complete, and you'll still need to fill out the rest manually by navigating to areas that show up as blank space. This kind of overcomplication of mapping out the world is actually something I think suits the game very well. When you pull up your map, which is something you'll do very often, you can actually see your character look down at it in the background. You can even walk slowly with it still out, which lends itself to the feeling of being lost and confused or struggling to properly plot a path to your intended destination. Several NPC characters warn you of how dangerous Hollow Nest is, and your navigation woes are only part of the reason why that rings true. Like I said earlier, the other half of this game's DNA borrows heavily from the Souls series. It's a rather faithful 2D Souls-like, which is another term I did an entire past video on if you want to check out. Essentially, that means it has location-based save points, respawning enemies, and multiple challenging boss fights. But some of the most directly inspired gameplay ideas are in the death mechanic that sees you lose all of your currency once killed and tasks you with trekking back to that location to get it back, with a second death meaning you lose it all. Hollow Knight adds a little bit of a twist to this formula by having your death leave behind a dark shadow version of you that you actually have to defeat before you get your Geo back. It uses the same attacks and abilities you do, so as you go through the game and get stronger, it gets a little harder and harder to beat as time goes on, but ultimately I find it far more forgiving than the Dark Souls version. There's also an item you can find that, if given to a specific NPC, will call your shadow back to that location to fight you there, rather than a particularly tricky section to get through. The other dead giveaway to the Souls series inspiration is the esoteric storytelling. Almost nothing about the plot is told to you directly, but snippets of the world's lore are found in the item descriptions and messages littered around the environment that you may or may not even see during the playthrough. In Dark Souls, this ambiguity led me to seek out lore videos to explain and confirm theories I had about the story. But in Hollow Knight, I can't seem to get a grip on what's going on at all, and the bits of lore that I have gone to look up haven't really interested me. I will admit that I think I'm only about halfway through the game at most, so it could be some revelation later on will get me into the story, but so far it's probably the weakest element of the game, and it's really disappointing because the character designs and different locations that make up the Kingdom of Hollow Nest are really cool, and I want to know more about all of them, but the game seems to work a little too hard to keep that information to itself. Luckily, the actual gameplay is incredibly fun and addicting. While exploring, various kinds of enemies will block your path, and at first, all you're able to do against them is swing a rather short-range blade called a nail to do damage. But over time, you find and purchase charms that add abilities or modifiers to your character. They can do a wide range of super useful or seemingly useless things like extending your sword's reach, making you move faster, or making you stink. But combining the different charms with one another to see how they synergize is a deep puzzle system of its own that can feel incredibly rewarding. For example, combining the stink charm with one that launches homing creatures will make them explode with a damaging stink cloud, dealing additional damage. Each charm takes up a certain number of slots, and you upgrade the number of slots you have available over time as well, giving you more options for combat and navigation. And you will need all those options, because combat can get really difficult. Most enemies attack in such various ways that you will need to have encountered them and internalize what they do if you hope to be successful against them. Boss fights are the same way, but require a lot of dexterity to maintain recognition of their patterns and stay out of harm's way. Some of these fights have driven me to near controller throwing rage, but the satisfaction upon beating them is still an amazing feeling. Hollow Knight is an amazing love letter to two genres of games as well as a celebration of high quality 2D visuals. It's the kind of title that radiates just how much the developers at Team Cherry love video games. I'm still not done with it, and despite my disinterest in the game's narrative so far, its gameplay is all I've been able to think about, and I can't wait to dive right back into Hollow Nest for more. So, have any of you gotten the chance to play Hollow Knight? Will you give it a shot if you haven't? What do you think about the Metroidvania genre today in general? Let us know. We're listening.